For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
In the summer of 2003, newlyweds Eleni Marcu, 27, and Thomas Westcott, 29, full of hopes for their future, embarked on a sunset cruise off Greece's scenic Andros Island. Their small charter boat, however, never returned. A sudden, violent squall was quickly blamed, but despite an extensive, coordinated search of the vast Aegean Sea involving the Coast Guard and local fishermen, Eleni and Tom vanished without a trace. Their disappearance became synonymous with the sea's cruel, unsolved mysteries. For 22 agonizing years, their families lived with crushing uncertainty, haunted by unanswered questions and the silent expanse of the ocean. Then, in 2025, a startling discovery was made. A single tarnished gold band, tangled deep in a trawler's net, etched with familiar initials. This is the complete investigation into what truly happened to Eleni and Tom, and the chilling truth the sea kept hidden for decades. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. In the summer of 2003, the Aegean Sea off the coast of Greece served as the idyllic backdrop for the honeymoon of Eleni Marcu, a 27-year-old Greek national, and Thomas Westcott, a 29-year-old American. Newly married, their union represented a blend of cultures, celebrated amidst the ancient beauty of the Cyclades. Their chosen destination, Andros Island, promised serene days and romantic evenings, a perfect beginning to their shared life. On their fifth evening, as the sun began its descent towards the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Eleni and Tom decided upon a sunset cruise, a popular offering from local charter operators. It was to be a quintessential Aegean experience, a tranquil voyage across the calm cerulean waters. However, the tranquility proved deceptive. As their small charter boat ventured further from the island's sheltered coves, an unforeseen meteorological event rapidly developed. Without significant warning, a sudden and violent squall materialized, transforming the placid sea into a turbulent expanse. High winds and torrential rain descended with unexpected ferocity, scattering the numerous small vessels that dotted the evening waters. Local mariners, accustomed to the Aegean's volatile temperament, scrambled to navigate the treacherous conditions, seeking the safety of port. As the storm abated and darkness fully enveloped the coastline, the small armada of returning boats began to trickle back into the harbors of Andros. One by one, fishing vessels and recreational charters docked, their crews and passengers relieved to have weathered the unexpected tempest. Yet as the hours progressed and the last known vessels accounted for, one charter remained conspicuously absent. The boat carrying Eleni Marcu and Thomas Westcott failed to return. Initial concern gradually escalated into a profound disquiet, then into an undeniable dread. The realization solidified. The newlyweds, who had embarked on a romantic sunset cruise just hours before, had vanished into the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Aegean Sea. The dawning realization that Eleni Marcu and Thomas Westcott had vanished ignited an urgent, large-scale search and rescue operation. As dawn broke over the Aegean, the Hellenic Coast Guard mobilized its resources, dispatching patrol boats and coordinating aerial surveys across a widening grid off Andros Island. At the forefront of these efforts was Lieutenant Sofia Kareli, a seasoned officer with years of experience navigating the unpredictable complexities of maritime incidents. Under her command, the initial hours transformed into days of relentless searching. Fishing vessels from neighboring islands, their crews acutely aware of the sea's unforgiving nature, joined the official efforts, combing the waters where the squall had struck. The search parameters expanded rapidly, covering hundreds of square nautical miles, extending from the immediate vicinity of Andros towards the open sea. Divers were deployed in shallower areas, meticulously examining the seabed for any sign of wreckage. Yet, despite the exhaustive and sustained efforts over several days, the sea yielded no answers. There was no debris field, no splintered wood, no life vests, and no sign of the charter boat itself. Crucially, no bodies were ever recovered. The complete absence of physical evidence was baffling, defying conventional explanations for a vessel lost at sea. Investigators, including Lieutenant Kareli, were left to grapple with a void of information. Initial theories centered on a catastrophic boating accident, perhaps the small charter capsizing rapidly in the squall, leaving insufficient time for a distress call or for the occupants to don safety equipment. However, the total lack of wreckage made this difficult to substantiate. Other possibilities were reluctantly considered. Piracy, though rare in these specific waters, could not be entirely dismissed, or, more chillingly, a staged disappearance. The latter gained a quiet, unsettling traction among some due to the unprecedented absence of any trace. Skipper Nikos Papadakis, the owner and operator of the missing charter, provided his testimony, describing the sudden ferocity of the squall and his own harrowing experience navigating his larger vessel back to port. Yet his account offered no specific insight into the fate of Eleni and Tom's boat, leaving authorities with a deepening enigma. As weeks bled into months, the initial fervor of the search for Eleni Marcoux and Thomas Westcott inevitably began to wane. The Hellenic Coast Guard, having exhausted all viable search parameters and deployed every available resource, could not sustain the intensive operation indefinitely without new leads. Patrol boats returned to routine duties, aerial surveillance ceased, and the specialized dive teams were redeployed. The official classification of the case shifted from an active search and rescue to a missing persons investigation, then slowly, inexorably, into the bleak category of a cold case. The file, once thick with daily reports and urgent directives, grew thinner, eventually relegated to a dusty archive shelf, a testament to an unsolved enigma. For the families of Eleni and Tom, this transition marked the beginning of an agonizing two-decade ordeal. The absence of any tangible evidence, no wreckage, no bodies, no final resting place, denied them the fundamental human right of closure. Eleni's parents in Greece and Tom's family in the United States were left suspended in a perpetual state of limbo, unable to mourn a death that had never been confirmed, yet unable to cling to any realistic hope of their loved one's return. Every passing year deepened the void, transforming initial grief into a persistent, dull ache compounded by unanswered questions. Birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays served as stark reminders of the lives that had been abruptly, inexplicably erased. Over these 22 years, in the absence of facts, speculation flourished. The initial theory of a catastrophic accident, while plausible given the squall, became increasingly difficult to reconcile with the total lack of physical evidence. This void allowed a more unsettling possibility to gain traction: the idea of a staged disappearance. Whispers and theories circulated that the newlyweds had perhaps chosen to vanish, to start a new life elsewhere, leveraging the storm as a perfect cover. Such notions, though entirely unsubstantiated, offered a desperate narrative where the couple might still be alive, however remote the chance. Without any debris to anchor the narrative to a tragic accident, the case remained adrift in a sea of conjecture. The cold reality was that the investigation had lain dormant for over 2 decades, its files sealed by time and the vast indifference of the Aegean, offering little hope that the truth would ever surface. 22 years had passed since the disappearance of Eleni Marcoux and Thomas Westcott, a period during which the Aegean Sea had continued its timeless rhythm, indifferent to the human tragedy it held. The sun still rose and set over Andros, and the fishing boats still plied their trade, their nets cast into the deep, a daily ritual that had endured for millennia. On a Tuesday morning, far from the tourist-laden shores, a grizzled fisherman named Stavros Patros guided his trawler through the familiar waters, his gaze fixed on the horizon, his thoughts on the day's potential haul. The drone of the engine was a constant companion, as the heavy nets dragged along the seabed, sifting through sand and rock, hoping for the bounty of the sea. As the sun climbed higher, casting a shimmering path across the water, Stavros initiated the laborious process of hauling in the nets. The winch groaned, slowly pulling the massive mesh from the depths. With each foot of net retrieved, the weight intensified, indicating a promising catch. Finally, the vast dripping net broke the surface, teeming with fish, crustaceans, and the occasional piece of detritus from the ocean floor. Stavros and his crew began the methodical sorting, separating the marketable fish from the unwanted bycatch. It was during this routine task that Stavros's hand brushed against something unusual, something that gleamed with an unnatural luster amidst the wet, organic tangle. He pulled it free, a small, perfect circle of yellow gold, surprisingly heavy in his calloused palm. It was unmistakably a ring, a wedding band. Its surface, though dulled by years of submersion, still held a faint sheen. What truly arrested his attention, however, were the faint but discernible etchings on its inner band. With a squint, he made out a date, 2207-03, and initials EM to TW. The date was stark. It was the precise day the young honeymooners, Eleni Marcu and Thomas Westcott, had vanished without a trace, a local legend whispered about in hushed tones for 2 decades. The initials matched. The discovery sent a shiver down Stavros's spine, a profound realization that he had just pulled a piece of a 2-decade-old mystery from the silent depths. The sea had finally spoken, offering a tangible clue. Without hesitation, Stavros secured the ring, and upon returning to port reported his extraordinary find to the Hellenic Coast Guard, reopening a cold case that had long been resigned to the annals of the Aegean's unsolved enigmas. The discovery of the wedding band, bearing the indelible mark of July 22, 2003, and the initials EM to TW, shattered the 2-decade silence surrounding the disappearance of Eleni Marcu and Thomas Westcott. Fisherman Stavros Patros's report to the Hellenic Coast Guard immediately triggered a re-evaluation of the dormant cold case. For Lieutenant Sofia Kareli, now a commander, the news was both a shock and a profound validation. The case that had haunted her career, a symbol of the sea's impenetrable mysteries, had finally yielded a tangible clue. The initial phase of this renewed investigation centered on rigorous authentication. Coast Guard archives, long sealed, were meticulously reopened. The details etched into the ring's inner band were cross-referenced against the original missing persons reports and family testimonies from 2003. The match was undeniable. The date precisely aligned with the couple's disappearance, and the initials unequivocally corresponded to Eleni Marcu and Thomas Westcott. It was Tom's wedding band, a symbol of their vanished union, now resurrected from the depths. To glean further intelligence from this pivotal artifact, the ring was transported to Athens for forensic examination. Dr. Ben Ortiz, a distinguished metallurgist known for his expertise in marine archaeology and material degradation, was tasked with its analysis. Under high-powered microscopes, Dr. Ortiz meticulously examined the gold band. He noted the purity of the metal, which had resisted significant corrosion despite its prolonged submersion. His detailed assessment focused on minute scratches, areas of abrasion, and any subtle deformations that might indicate the forces it had endured beneath the waves. The objective was not merely to confirm its authenticity, but to extract any physical narrative the ring might tell about its journey and the circumstances surrounding its loss. The immediate questions confronting investigators were stark and pressing. Where precisely had Stavros Patros's trawler been operating when the ring was netted? What did that specific location, 22 years later, imply about the actual fate of Eleni and Tom? The ring's emergence offered the first concrete link to their physical whereabouts since their disappearance, fundamentally shifting the investigative paradigm from an abstract, speculative mystery to a tangible, if still fragmented, puzzle. The precise location of the trawler's net haul, recorded meticulously in Stavros Patros's digital logs, became the cornerstone of the reinvigorated investigation. Commander Kareli's team, working in conjunction with marine archaeologists and oceanographers, meticulously cross-referenced the trawler's GPS coordinates with the exact time the wedding band was recovered. This fixed point in the Aegean, 22 years after the disappearance, provided the first concrete anchor in a sea of speculation. From this discovery point, advanced oceanographic modeling software was deployed. Specialists began to reconstruct the complex interplay of currents, tides, and prevailing winds that characterized the Aegean Sea in both 2003 and the intervening decades. Historical satellite data, buoy readings, and detailed bathymetric charts were fed into the algorithms, creating a sophisticated simulation of marine drift. The objective was to plot a precise drift lane, a probable trajectory that the ring, and by extension, any other debris from the missing charter boat, might have followed over the 22 years since the squall. This intricate mapping revealed a critical insight. The projected drift lane extended far beyond the original search grid established in the immediate aftermath of the disappearance, an area where the initial, more limited search efforts had never reached. Armed with this compelling new data, authorities made the decision to deploy state-of-the-art sonar technology. A specialized survey vessel was dispatched to systematically scan the seabed along the calculated drift lane, focusing on the previously unexplored perimeter. For days, the ship traversed the designated corridor, its sonar emitting pulses that mapped the contours of the ocean floor, searching for any anomaly. Then, on the third day of the renewed search, the sonar screens registered a distinct shallow debris field. It was located approximately 2 nautical miles outside the original search grid, lying at a depth of 70 meters. The discovery was immediate and profound. The sonar imagery revealed scattered fragments consistent with a small wooden vessel, twisted metal, and other indeterminate objects, all resting on the seabed. This tangible evidence fundamentally dismantled the prevailing theory of a staged disappearance. The debris field, precisely where oceanographic models predicted it could be, unequivocally pointed not to a deliberate vanishing act, but to a catastrophic maritime accident, finally offering a grim yet concrete answer to a 2-decade-old enigma. The sonar's discovery of a shallow debris field marked the conclusive end of a 2-decade-long search. Remotely operated vehicles, deployed soon after the initial sonar detection, descended into the Aegean's depths, confirming the presence of wreckage consistent with a small wooden charter boat. Fragments of the hull, twisted metal, and remnants of the vessel's engine were clearly visible, scattered across the seabed at a depth of 70 meters. This was, unequivocally, the final resting place of the boat that had carried Eleni Marcoux and Thomas Westcott on their ill-fated sunset cruise. The nature and distribution of the debris field provided critical insights into the catastrophe. The wreckage suggested a rapid and violent sinking, consistent with a vessel overwhelmed by an extreme meteorological event. The sudden squall in 2003, far more severe than initially understood, had likely capsized or broken apart the small boat quickly, allowing no time for distress signals or the deployment of safety equipment. The lack of any significant floating debris in the immediate aftermath was now explained by the rapid descent of the vessel and the subsequent deep-sea currents that had carried the lighter fragments far from the original incident site outside the initial search grid. Eleni and Tom had not vanished. They were victims of the Aegean's sudden, unforgiving temperament, their boat sinking swiftly and silently. This resolution, though tragic, brought a profound sense of closure to the families who had endured 22 years of agonizing uncertainty. The prevailing theories of a staged disappearance were finally and definitively debunked. The painful truth, while confirming the loss of their loved ones, offered a narrative grounded in fact, replacing speculation with certainty. The families could now mourn, their grief tempered by the knowledge of what truly transpired, and the certainty that Eleni and Tom had not abandoned them, but had been claimed by the sea. The journey to this truth began with a single, small gold band, a testament to enduring love and a silent witness to tragedy. Its fortuitous discovery, combined with the application of advanced oceanographic modeling and cutting-edge sonar technology, illuminated a cold case that had long defied explanation. It underscored the relentless power of forensic science and the unexpected ways in which the deepest mysteries can eventually yield their secrets. The Aegean Sea, vast and ancient, had finally released a fragment of its past, reminding all that even after decades, the truth can still surface from the depths.